Hi, good evening, everybody. We're excited today to have our second parenting webinar. So happy you guys are here. Today, we're going to talk about homework habit, which is a topic that I know a lot of you guys are interested in. And today, we're so happy and honored to have our speaker, Kayla McCallan. Allow me to introduce her to you guys. Kayla is a clinical psychology doctorate student at Rutgers. She graduated from Bucknell University and she majored in psychology and minored in both children's studies and philosophy. So like one major, two minors, way to go, Kayla. And her clinical interests center around treatment for children and adolescents struggling with conduct issues as well as traumatic experience using an integrated psychodynamic and cognitive behavior approach. She's also involved with research on the topic of diversity, racial dynamics, and non-traditional family structures. Kayla also previously worked at the Rutgers ADHD clinic as an extern, and she's now with us at the Haven, and her experience with the ADHD population would give her a lot of experience and expertise to talk to us about homework habit, which is our topic today. So we're lucky to have her. Kayla also works part-time as a case manager for individuals dealing with homelessness. Kayla is from the Boston area and has always been involved in serving the children in her community, whether that being, whether that be as a camp director, babysitter, or youth minister assistant. Her passion for providing youth with agency, understanding, and confidence is what drives her work. And she's an amazing person, and we're so lucky to have her. We're going to give the floor to her. Go ahead, Kayla.
Thank you so much, Hui, and welcome everybody. Thank you for attending and for kind of being invested in this aspect of raising your child. I know that studying and homework habits and the whole thing can be really frustrating sometimes, so I appreciate your time and wanting to listen. So let's get started. Okay, so why is this important? So why is homework important? The purpose of homework is to practice and apply the knowledge or skills that have been introduced to your child. It is the part of the learning experience, and it should not only be associated with punitive actions. I know, again, it can be really frustrating, and we have a tendency to be more firm with children on their expectations, and especially when you probably had a long day and now they're not getting their homework done, or it's been a perpetual issue. So children not only spend the majority of their time in an academic setting, but homework extends to the home. So just like you've, kind of been exhausted and probably had a long day, I guarantee your child has as well. They're stuck in school majority of the day, and then they have to extend beyond the school day and now be expected to focus on homework. Mm-hmm. So building healthy study habits make for more positive associations with school and family life. I don't think we realize how much those two things can go hand in hand, but there is a good connection between, a supportive habit, study life, and homework life, and also a pretty close-knit, supportive family. Mm-hmm. All right, so the role that environment plays when it comes to studying skills or homework. So habits are better built with routine or structure. So it's one thing to strive to do something and to say, okay, well, every time you come home, how about you have a snack and then you do this, but then of course life gets in the way, and then, there might be an after school activity or something that kind of disrupts that. And I understand that, that happens, but if you're trying to build a routine, there has to be consistency. And so you can, have that conversation with your child. Like, is there a specific order that they'd like to do things in? Or is there a specific thing that they need to get them motivated to start their homework? And do they need a break? Do they need a snack? Do they need an activity to do before? And then sticking with that routine will build that structure. Each child's learning process is unique. So there's not a one size fits all when it comes to learning environment specifics. Some people are able to learn in more louder environments and they actually kind of need that stimulation in the background going on. Some people need absolute quiet. Some people need music. Some people need to be comfortable. They might need to do their work on in the bed, or, in a cozy area versus sitting at a desk in, straight back chair. So it really just kind of depends on what works for your child, rather than, I think there's this assumption that the best way to study is a stereotypical, like, sitting down at a desk, getting it all done in one go. And that doesn't always work for everybody. Breaks can be helpful to maintain stamina and long-term focus. As contradictory or ironic as it seems, to have your child going with their work and then implementing a break halfway through, it makes me feel like, oh, this is disruptive. But sometimes the break is needed for them to rejuvenate, for them to get back into the focus, because if they're going for too long over time, they might start making mistakes or not, they look like they're doing their homework, and they are, but you can't tell when they're not doing it to the best of their abilities, and you can't tell when their cognitive functioning and strength is declining while they're doing it. As long as they're getting it done, that's all they're focused on. So breaks can be very helpful to implement when needed. And I kind of touched on this with each child's learning process is unique. Increasing comfort can positively affect productivity. I know for me, like, I'm in school for a long time and I'm very uncomfortable in whatever clothes I'm wearing, whatever chair I was sitting in all day, a hard desk. Sometimes I just, I want to come home and just sit on the couch, sit in the bed, and I'll have my laptop and do work that way. And that's what kind of makes me engage, rather than kind of recreating the same environment I've been in all day, which is very formally structured. So child guardian relationships. So this is also a very big proponent of what it's like to build good study habits, because the relationship that you have with either your guardian or sibling or just someone in your family, and how that extends to this process can be very meaningful. So connection. Be conscious of how often you discuss academics with your child. There are other ways to connect and maintain a strong relationship. I know, again, we don't always realize it, but sometimes asking, oh, how did that test go? Or did you study for this? Or I know you have this packet due soon. Even though it might not be intended to stress out your child, sometimes those messages are embedded, and it becomes something that they internalize, and they might come to the assumption that, oh, like if I don't get an A on this is going to be a really big issue between me and my family. And that might not be the case at all. You could just be curious, you could just be wanting to support, interested, but there are other ways to ask about how your child's day was. Is there a specific hobby that they do, a specific sport that they do after school, where you could ask more, something about that. Communication. If your child is avoiding their homework or struggling with it, express curiosity and compassion to figure out what's going on. It's easy to get quick to, confused. It's easy to be confused about, you've been working on the same assignment for hours. I don't understand what's going on or why you're procrastinating it. And I think the language and using a more compassionate and curious stance can make them feel more comfortable in disclosing what they might be struggling if they don't feel comfortable doing so. They might not want to feel like they can't do it, or that you're going to get mad at them because they're struggling with a topic. But if you say, hey, what's going on? Like, I noticed this is taking you a little longer than you normally need. Is there any way I can help? Is there anything that we can do to get you back on the right track? Involvement. Be as involved in your child's academic process as much as they need. Some children or tasks might need more involvement than others. It goes back to the one size doesn't fit all thing. Some children really need, their parent to check their work when it's done, to study with them. I was someone who needed my mom to do flashcards with me and to practice skills with me. And that helped a lot. But not everyone wants that. And some people like to be more independent, and some people don't need that. There's all this software and technology now to study, and all these, websites that help with that stuff. So don't feel like because, you're not all hands-on with your child that's something that they're lacking. It might not be. And then lastly, expectations. Each child has a different set of strengths and weaknesses, so it's best to shift your expectations of them according to their abilities. So if you know math, for example, is not, the strongest suit, kind of tailoring your expectations of grades, because grades are unfortunately how we measure in school, or like in grade school, intelligence in a way. We kind of do put an emphasis on, oh, if you're getting A's, then you're smarter than somebody who's getting C's. But we're not necessarily considering all the other factors that may be at play and the ways that your child might need extra help, or, might be thriving in something, in another subject, and kind of just being more attuned to that and shifting, is it realistic for my child to go from struggling in the subject for years to then getting all A's when they get to high school? Or is it going to be an incremental thing? And that, I feel, is more realistic. Self-regulated learning. So SRL is a cyclical process wherein the student plans for a task, monitors their performance, and then reflects on the outcome. The cycle then repeats as the student uses the reflection to adjust and prepare for the next task. So the whole idea of SRL is that it is kind of attitude based. There is aspects of, planning and your own thought, and it has to do with kind of mixing self-esteem with behavior and action and thoughts. It's kind of one holistic view of all of them and how they all come into play in feeling like you can accomplish something. So there are 3 phases. There's forethought, planning, and reflection. So for the forethought phase, if we're going to start there, it's cyclical. But if we're starting with forethought phase, this is goal setting. This is kind of planning out the task and strategic planning. What are the little things? I'm going to get kind of more in depth about this in the next slide, but what are the parameters of the task? And then self-motivational beliefs. How confident am I that I can complete whatever task I set out for myself, or whatever goal I set out? Am I intrinsically interested? Am I actually motivated to understand whatever the topic is, or the task, or perform well? Am I goal oriented? Do I actually care about accomplishing whatever that goal is? Then that leads to the performance phase. And the first umbrella of that is self-control. Do I have the self-control to kind of do what I just did in the forethought phase, which is, the planning? So I planned, but now can I perform that plan? Can I focus my attention and shift my attention to where it's needed? Do I have a strategy, or am I just kind of going with it in a way that may not be suiting me? So it's kind of about like implementing whatever the forethought process was about. And then self-observation, monitoring during that time, like being conscious of, oh, like, am I doing this? Like, am I actually getting the task done in the way that I said I was? Like, it's kind of a reflection, but it's as you're doing it. Just kind of being mindful in that moment of how you're doing. And then that brings us to the self-reflection phase. So this is after the performance has been done, the behavior is done, the task is done. Kind of looking at yourself and saying, like, am I proud of how I just did that? Is there a way that I could have done it better? Yeah, I did it and I'm proud of myself, but was it helpful? Could I do that again? Kind of just seeing like how you feel afterwards, and then tailoring how you go back into the forethought phase for the next time that you have a task, because that it's basically a self-feedback session of, okay, well, this worked well, this didn't. Maybe I need to spend more time doing this. Okay, got it. And then you can kind of go back into that forethought phase and then perform the whole thing again. So in terms of, we're just speaking about tasks and kind of that self-control. So here's some specific studying strategies that fit under that. Break down tasks. So focus more on the process, steps, and or outline of a big task to make it feel more manageable. There's a tendency to say, I have a paper due in 2 weeks. The paper to that as a concept is very vague. It's very abstract. So maybe it's, I'm going to write the intro in the next 2 days. I'm going to read the studies that I have to read, to, whatever the assignment is, just kind of break it down in a very bite-sized system so that it feels more manageable. Because I know for me, when I get overwhelmed, something seems too big, I'm like, oh, that's out of my hands. I'm just going to wait till the last minute when I feel the pressure to get it done. But if you break it down, and you can still give yourself a little bit of pressure, but it's across time, and then that way you're not procrastinating. Check work. Review the child's work to ensure not only that they completed it, but they're understanding the concept. And I would say that this is more aligned with the idea that do this as needed. Again, not every child needs this, but like someone in the chat said, their child has a tendency to kind of want to get the assignment done so they can go outside and play, and completely understandable. But that's an opportunity to get involved with your child's work and to just make it an established thing. That can be a habit, that can be a routine, that, okay, yes, you can play after you finish your homework, but I always have to check, and we will check it together. And then once it's, corrected, then you can go. Set SMART goals. So goals are prompts for students to monitor their behaviors and evaluate performance. It's very similar to the breakdown tasks idea. It's very much so like breaking down the goal that the child has and whatever the subject is. So say, your child tends to struggle in a specific subject, and the goal isn't necessarily to get an A, but the goal is maybe to learn a specific concept that's hard to understand, like for a scientific concept, and kind of breaking down what their goal is to make it an attainable goal and not make them feel like, or so that they don't feel like, oh, I'll never get there. I'll never be able to understand the water cycle. It's been too hard for me. I don't understand. But if there's something specific that you can kind of, you can say, okay, well, how about we learn first what this part of the water cycle does, and then we do this, and then we do this, and it makes them feel like, oh, I have a chance actually of getting it one day or at some point by the end of the unit. Increase self-control. Use a to-do list or a planner to lay out the assignments that need to be done. So sometimes just checking off a box feels very satisfying and motivating to continue to do so. So if, it's write the introduction today, or, get 5 math problems done out of the packet, then having that written down with like a box or a planner, one, just keeps you accountable, because it's really easy to forget all the little assignments that children have to do. But then once they complete one thing and they check it off, or they strike it out, whatever modality they like to use, it feels very like, oh, I just accomplished something. Like it's a self-esteem boost in a way of I can keep doing this. Positive self-talk. So this is when a child reminds themselves of prior success and their capability. So it's about encouraging them to do their best rather than get straight A's. So it's about the idea of more focusing on the self-esteem and encouraging than saying, oh, the point of school is just to get an A or get a B in a subject. The point of school is to learn and to feel like you are learning and that you are doing well and actually understanding. And making yourself feel confident that you're building these skills and this knowledge to further apply in life. And so encouraging your child to have positive self-talk and providing positive self-talk to them, especially for children that I know, are a little more anxious and are more concerned with their grades, and feeling like, oh, I just got, not a great grade on this. And it's a really difficult thing for them to get over. That's a perfect opportunity for you to remind them of their prior successes and how, this is one assignment that doesn't determine anything. And lastly, attributions. Establishing controllable attributions that elicit motivation instead of defeat. Similarly to positive self-talk, attributions are it's under the umbrella of positive self-talk. It's a specific way to provide, affirmation, to provide kind of encouragement to your child when they do something that you are proud of or that they're proud of. And kind of focusing more on that rather than whatever failure in whatever, way that means to you, because it usually doesn't feel good to them either. So focusing on how they fell short of something doesn't really promote further motivation. Okay. So this is also like part 2 of studying strategies. So we want to build self-efficacy. So homework and studying is meant to be an independent task. Yes, it's good for parents or siblings or people to step in and help, tutors. But like the discussion we had earlier, at some point your child might be on their own and have to bring these studying skills with them and these strategies with them. And we want to make sure that our child feels like they are in control of their own success. So for example, this is also a cyclical process. So say your child is struggling on a science test, the attribution might be, this is a healthy way. So you might have them think, why am I struggling? Not just, I'm struggling, I can't do it. We want to get them to a place where they're saying, why am I struggling? And actually considering that.
Mm-hmm.
Not, having any assumption about what that means to struggle. Just, I notice I'm struggling. Why is that?
Mm-hmm.
Then that turns into controllable attributions. Did I not check my understanding? Did I not consider the study guide? Considering specific things that maybe they could have, done in retrospect when they think about that. And then that then turns into positive emotional and behavioral reactions. So expectations of success, feelings of hope. So, okay, now I've kind of narrowed down what possible things it could have been. Can I think positively about what the future holds for when I take a science test again, or when I'm studying for my next one? Can I still have an expectation of success, even though this may have been a defeat or a disappointment because I didn't do as well as I wanted to do? But with the controllable attributions, it makes it more likely that I'm going to have an expectation of success because I know now where to intervene. Adaptive inferences. What do I need to do to perform better? Yeah, so, I understand that I didn't do so well. I am hopeful that I'll do better next time, but what specific things can I ask for? What specific things can I do on my end to perform up to my standard or up to my own expectation? And then that turns into an adaptive reaction, which is actually not just sitting with that and staying with that. What do I need to perform better? Oh, I might need to go over this unit an extra time. And then when it comes down to it, you procrastinate and then you don't do it. So adaptive inferences turn into adaptive reactions, hopefully. And this is where you actually seek out help, self-testing, and you make a study plan for the next time. You actually, and it doesn't have to be when the next time comes around, you can be proactive. You can say, oh, I realized I didn't really pay attention as much to these last few units. So going into the homework from now on, I'm going to make sure I do X, Y, and Z so that when the test comes around, I will be better prepared. It doesn't have to be once the test comes around, because sometimes that can also still be overwhelming, and it makes this whole cycle less seamless if you wait until it's kind of already that pressure and that anxiety about the next time is building up.
Right.
So how to talk to your child about grades. This is a very difficult thing because, as I said, you don't want to make it just about their academic success and kind of make them self-conscious about that. But it's still necessary because you want them to do well and you want them to build the skills that they need to. So the way that I'd suggest you talk to your child about grades is keeping in mind that culture is communicated and handed down through families. So sometimes how we were raised or what we have experienced ourselves may not be the most efficient for your specific child's needs. So specifically, if there was a way that homework was done in your house, no TV, no talking, can't have a snack until you do it, you can't go outside until you do it. You need to sit down here for 2 hours. And maybe that's how it was in your house. Or the opposite, maybe it was very lenient. But if that's not working for your child, kind of, making sure to keep that in mind and not let that shape your attitude about your child's work ethic, success. And then next, overemphasizing the importance of grades directly or indirectly. I think sometimes, it's hard to realize that you're doing it, can cause academic anxiety in the child. And this can potentially lead to the avoidance and create a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what I mean by that is, if a child is anxious that they might not live up to your standards, that they might not perform as well as you're expecting them to, they might then put off the assignment because it's better not to do something than to do something and fail, or to do something and disappoint.
Mhm.
And then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because the whole fear was that they weren't going to do as well on something, and then therefore they might not study to do as well as they could because they're anxious,
Mhm.
and then they end up not doing as well as they could because they never studied.
Mhm.
So kind of keeping that in mind as well. And then lastly, instead, parents can take a more communicative approach that reassures their child that getting bad grades is a part of the educational process. It is important to inspire children to be motivated by the idea of success rather than driven by the fear of failure.
Mhm.
So I understand that intrinsically it's hard to, not every subject is going to be interesting for your child. Not every topic is going to be interesting. Homework itself is not usually interesting until maybe like later on higher education. But the point is that, yeah, they're not always going to, do as best as you want them to do, as best as they want to do. But that is part of the learning process.
Right.
Sometimes you need to not do as well as you can figure out, okay, where are my deficits? Where are the things that I can kind of build upon? Am I just not grasping whatever this topic is because it just doesn't come naturally to me? And like, that's okay. That's part of it. And you want you want your child to be more focused on aiming for understanding, because if they understand, then it just makes it easier for them too. They don't have to worry about telling you that they got a bad grade. They don't have to worry about not feeling capable in their teacher's eyes. They don't have to worry about their own self-esteem if they're doing well. Children want to do well.
Right.
So if we can inspire them to be motivated on, okay, this was a setback, but let's get you on track. Let's make sure that this is something that you actually understand and you can apply. Then that's going to be a more long-term success for them than it then will be, oh, I can't fail. I can't get a C on this because it will be the end of the world. And I believe that might be it.